Big fleas have little fleas upon their backs to bite 'em, and little fleas have lesser fleas, and so ad infinitum. The fleas in question are human rights lawyers, the human rights lawyers that are now biting the Labour, the socialist government. Trace it back to 1998 and what happened. Labour introduced the Human Rights Act, bringing the European Convention of Human Rights into domestic British law. This proved a boondoggle for lefty lawyers who were able to suck on the blood of the British taxpayer, getting enormous amounts of money from them as they sued the government, often backed by legal aid, making careers, building businesses out of human rights law, used again and again to frustrate what conservatives wanted to do. And now it's being used to frustrate what Labour wants to do. This is the flea being bit by a lesser flea. The big flea is being caught. And it wasn't meant to happen this way. Human rights law was meant to obstruct the Tories when they were in office, but the left, they were so righteous, so pious, so holy, that surely no one would ever need recourse to law to stop them doing things. And now human rights law is used to stop deportations to France. This great new policy, this exciting arrangement that was going to mean one in, one out, that was going to provide a deterrent to people crossing over the channel. But now we have evidence given in court that France is not a safe country. You and I may think that because they eat too much garlic and all of those sorts of things, and we've had a friendly enmity with them now for centuries. But no, it's not about that. It's that they may have an official civil rights, human rights code, but they don't actually follow it, and therefore it's dangerous for people to be sent back there. That's what an illegal migrant's lawyers argued in court, and the judge decided that he had a case based on human trafficking and whether or not he had been trafficked into this country, or at least before he got to this country, and therefore whether it was an abuse of his rights to send him back. This is balmy. People who come here in small boats illegally should be removed. It's a crazy system that thinks the rights of foreigners are the same as the rights as Britons. They are not. British people deserve better rights. It's our system. It's designed to protect us. We have the right, after all, to vote, the greatest human right of all. We have the right to be in this country by our birth. It is our birthright, or by citizenship that we have been granted. People who come here illegally, make dangerous crossings, do not and should not have the same rights. They should have different rights. Of course, they should be treated reasonably in the process of deporting them. They should have no more right than that. Whilst they're here, of course, we'll feed them and we'll make sure that they're not stuck out in the rain or the snow or whatever it is. But they just don't deserve the same rights as British citizens, as His Majesty's subjects, who are in a clearly separate category. After all, we pay for it. We are the taxpayers of the United Kingdom who have to fund these people coming here, now costing us billions of pounds a year. So Labour thought it had a scheme. Labour thought the Rwanda scheme wouldn't work and therefore dropped it and came up with their own scheme. A pretty ropey scheme, it has to be said, because actually one in, one out still meant we were taking the same numbers. It meant that anyone who came here illegally would be merely replaced by a new arrival who may then or may not be able to bring family members under the other rights that we grant to foreigners coming into this country. So it was a pretty ropey scheme to start with, and I very much doubted it was going to solve the migration problem. But now it doesn't even get beyond the first introduction of it as a policy. The Home Office paid for flights on Air France, I note. I can't quite understand why they weren't using a British airline to send people back, so the money at least remained within the British institutions rather than going to a foreign flag carrier. Nonetheless, leaving that to one side, paid for flights and the seats were empty. You can see pictures of the empty seats as the plane went to France at 9 o'clock in the morning with no illegal immigrant on it because of human rights. So what has to be done? Well, it needs to be clear that the Human Rights Act must be repealed. Following on from that, we must withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights and the jurisdiction of the European Court of Human Rights. But that isn't sufficient. And this is really important because there's been a lot of concentration on the Human Rights Act and the European Convention, as if merely withdrawing from that will solve the problem. It won't. Further things need to be done, and the judgment now reminds us of what another one of them is. Many of us have been saying that we need to come out of the Convention on Refugees because that has been interpreted to create excessive rights that could mean, theoretically, that hundreds of millions of people have a right to settle in the United Kingdom, something that's obviously impractical, but better to deal with it now than wait until the flood becomes a deluge. But it's not just that, it is also the modern slavery. Because once somebody claims modern slavery and trafficking, then they have a ground for appeal, which was, as I understand it, the basic reason the appeal was allowed was because of modern slavery. Now, that's something that's very hard to disprove. If you say you've been trafficked across a border, how do you show for certain that somebody wasn't? How do you know that they didn't have pressure put on them? How do you know that they weren't told some story that may have turned out to be completely fictitious, which they believed at the time? It becomes a sort of safety net for people who want to make up a reason to stay. And this is where we face a fascinating political problem, because the British people are a kindly and a good people. We are generous to those in distress, and so we should be. It is, above all, our Christian duty to do this. But then people take advantage of it. And we know that's been happening with people coming into this country. People have claimed to be converting to Christianity so that they can't go back to certain Muslim countries. They've claimed to have sexual preferences so they can't go back to countries where those sexual preferences aren't enormously popular. And now they've realized that they can claim modern day slavery, and that becomes a trump card, a sort of joker in the pack to allow them to override the ordinary law. And I'm afraid we've just got to get tough. We've got to say that if you come here illegally, you must go, full stop. And if you've come here illegally and you've come from a safe country, frankly, that is your fault for leaving that safe country. That safe country won't take you back. You should have stayed there. Once you've got to France, you were safe. I know I like joking about France being a dangerous place and having too many cheeses that smell and all of that. But France is a wonderful and a great country with very serious protections for people's rights. And if you're there, you can claim asylum and you can stay there. Thanks very much. It's not really my problem. It's not the problem of His Majesty's government. And if you have decided willingly to leave a safe country, then we have the right to send you back to the dangerous country from which you originated, because France, quite understandably, doesn't want to take you back. But this Labour government will never do this, because they are the fleas of human rights lawyers. They are the famous lefty lawyers. They have made their careers, they've made their revenues, they've made their livelihoods out of this civil rights law. And of course they don't want to break away from it. It is more important to them than the needs of the British people. It's more important to them than dealing with a political problem that is making this country really quite angry. The mood amongst the British people is that they're not being taken seriously by those they elected. They feel that the major parties have allowed this to happen without consulting them and without then taking proper steps to stop it. We need to show that isn't true. Conservatives like me and reform supporters need to show that isn't true, and that politicians are genuinely listening and will follow the consequences of what is needed to make the policy work. Because there's been a lot of willing the ends but not the means. And this is true of the one in, one out policy. It is an aim to remove the problem, to stop the small boats, but without taking the other steps that are necessary. And anyone who's been following this for any length of time knew that the first person to be threatened with deportation would go to our courts. And our courts, obsessed as they are with human rights, and indeed following law Parliament has passed, so it's not entirely their fault, would intervene and would at least delay. But delay undermines the whole policy, because actually people need to be removed really, really quickly. The deterrent is that you arrive, you are put in a holding camp, you are deported within hours, no more than 48 hours. Once you're staying weeks, weeks become months, months become years, and then you're settled. Then you've started to have a family and you've got Article 8 rights and so on. And Labour's shown that it can't do it quickly because the courts will intervene. Therefore, they need to legislate. The King in Parliament is sovereign. It can be done. Our current visitor, Donald Trump, has shown how to do it. You have to be tough, you have to be ruthless, you have to have some backbone. Characteristics I fear Sir Keir Starmer, very keen on human rights law, doesn't actually have. Very much doubt his Attorney General, Lord Hermer, is going to want to unpick the mess of human rights law and modern day slavery, and I accept an act that was introduced by Theresa May, so Conservatives take some responsibility for it, a well-intentioned act now being abused. All of this needs to change. People who come here illegally need to go. The courts need to know that. Parliament needs to legislate. It can be done. It may cause problems. It may upset the left. It may be that they don't have the desire. But if they don't do it, another government will have to come in and do it properly.